Hello, my gorgeous friends. Welcome back to another studio talk. So, this one is appropriate given the weather today. There is a reason letting go feels harder than burnout. And it's not because you lack awareness, it's not because you don't understand nervous system regulation, and it's not because you don't want relief. It's because over responsibility became identity. And therefore, stepping back doesn't feel relieving. It actually feels quite destabilizing. If you've ever thought, if I stop, everything will fall apart. If I drop this, who's going to pick it up? This is the layer most burnout conversations never even touch on. And it's what we are talking about today. Before we go deeper, let me say something very clearly. This isn't theory for me. I have worked with women who are high functioning, super capable, very responsible, the ones that everyone else depends on. And I've also lived this pattern myself. The over-functioning, the peacekeeping, the it's easier if I just do this myself. And from the outside, that can look like strength. But from the inside, it slowly becomes heavy, weighted, overwhelming. And what I've seen, both personally and professionally, is that most burnout conversations stop at stress management. They teach you how to regulate. They teach you how to breathe properly, how to slow down. They never touch on the identity layer. They don't ask, who are you if you're not the one who is holding everything together? And that's the deeper shift. That's the part that feels unsafe for so many people. But that's the part we, my friend, will be naming today. Burnout is exhaustion, where over-responsibility is more structural. Exhaustion will say things like, I'm tired, where structure says, this is who I am. And when responsibility becomes identity, letting go doesn't ever feel like rest. It feels like you're erasing part of yourself. You don't just drop a task, you drop a role, you drop predictability, you drop a version of yourself that everyone else has organized themselves around. And that is where the resistance lives. You're not addicted to being overwhelmed, you're attached to being reliable. And there is a huge difference. And this is so not abstract. Let me give you real-life examples of how this can present itself. It shows up in very subtle and normal ways. You host, you organize, you anticipate, you smooth tensions, you remember the birthdays, you pay for more than your share, you hold the emotional temperature of the room, and you know who needs what in what exact moment. At first, that feels very generous, and it is generous. But generosity without reciprocity becomes very imbalanced, and the imbalance over time becomes resentment. Not loud resentment, not dramatic resentment, just this quiet, heavy, unspoken, the kind you may not even consciously register. However, your body does, your nervous system does, your fatigue does. Early adulthood is often a time when we feel a little on autopilot. We're building, we're pushing, we're proving, we're expanding, we're stabilizing. You don't pause to ask, is this reciprocal? Is this sustainable? Is this even mine to be carrying? Because you're busy building a life. But midlife interrupts that autopilot, not always dramatically, but definitely decisively. Your body reacts to too much saturation, not collapse. It's full of unrenegotiated roles, full of emotional backlog, full of responsibilities that were never distributed properly to other people. And suddenly, what once felt manageable now becomes insanely heavy. That's not regression. That's a new level of awareness in your own being. When you begin reorganizing, the system reacts. It has to. You step back and someone questions it. You don't host the way you once did, and someone begins to feel disappointed. You stop over explaining yourself, and someone feels confused. And then you begin to feel a sense of guilt. Because if you were always the stable one, others organize themselves around that stability. So your shift requires them to step up, and that feels disruptive. However, what you are asking for is not collapse, it's redistribution. Like someone else has to pick up some slack. You are not withdrawing your love, you're withdrawing that over functionality. And those are absolutely not the same thing. So letting go begins to feel unsafe because you equate holding everything to being valuable. But value does not require your overextension, and that is the shift. Real reciprocity requires conversation. Conversation requires courage. And courage can feel uncomfortable if you've always played the role of the peacekeeper. If you've built harmony by absorbing all this extra tension, then shifting into shared responsibility can feel like conflict. But peace built on overfunctioning is always going to be fragile. Think eggshells. It depends on your continued sacrifice. Real peace requires shared weight, shared responsibility. And that restructuring can feel messy before it will ever feel stable. Some relationships will adjust, some will resist, and some will fall away. This is not collapse, it's clarification. And you can always remember that some people are here for a reason. Some people are here for a season, and some people it's just time for them to go. And there's also another layer here that we touched on lightly, but I really want to talk about it because what if nothing ever changes? And not in that dramatic way, not in a catastrophic way, just slowly. If over responsibility remains the identity, the body eventually is going to absorb the cost of that, not as punishment, as pure protection. The fatigue will increase, tolerance will decrease, resentment deepens, the joy begins to narrow. You may still function normally, you may still perform and look very capable. However, that internal load is going to continue to accumulate, and eventually something's got to give. For women, it's usually our health. For some, it's more of an emotional withdrawal. For some, it's anger that shows up in really surprising and unexpected ways. And the body will not carry a sense of imbalance forever. That isn't fear based, that's the structural truth. Midlife often becomes the moment that our bodies and our whole being says, no more. That's not a sense of collapse, that's actually really great wisdom. So if you're feeling like you're a little on the edge, that's not a sense of weakness. That's your nervous system asking you for a little redistribution. This feels like the absolute perfect time for this part of our conversation because there is a storm raging outside right now. The waves are crashing onto the rocks. So, what does healthy letting go actually look like? It does not look like quitting your life. It does not look like dramatic exits. It looks like small redistributions. It looks like not answering that text immediately, not fixing things automatically, not always being the host, and not absorbing everything from someone else. It looks like tolerating the discomfort of someone else stepping into responsibility. It looks like letting someone else feel that friction instead of preemptively smoothing it out. It looks like saying, that doesn't work for me, and then staying steady while the whole system begins to recalibrate. Healthy letting go is not withdrawal, it's maturity. It's moving from always being the regulator to being an equal participant. And that shift requires steadiness, not force, just simple steadiness. If this conversation brought a specific moment to mind, a dinner, a holiday, a birthday, a bill you covered, or a moment where you swallowed frustration, this is not random. This is the awareness in your body surfacing. Your body always knows and it keeps score. You are not selfish for wanting balance, and you are not dramatic for noticing the cost of not having reciprocity in your relationships. You are recalibrating. However, recalibration can feel very destabilizing before it ever begins to feel aligned. Therefore, that discomfort you feel may not mean that something is wrong. It may mean that something is beautifully beginning to reorganize. If this video gave you language to something that you have been carrying quietly for some time, stay with this work. Subscribe. These conversations build on one another. And if there is a woman in your life who is like you, very strong, very capable, very dependable, yet maybe she's quietly stretched thin as well, send this to her. Not as correction, but as recognition. And there is also a space that I created called the Inner Tide. And this is where I share daily guidance similar to this to help you return to that sense of steadiness before you re-enter the world. It's not another noisy place. It's a place to reorganize. And you can learn all about that below. So always remember, as you know, I'm going to leave you with this. Remember who you came here to be. You do not have to carry what you have outgrown. You are allowed to evolve beyond the version of you that survived. Until next time, take care, everyone.